All right, here we go for part 2. So these next terms do have mathematical definitions for them. Okay, so let's talk through them. So the first one is collinear points. Now, in class, I would have called on a student and said, take a guess at what you think it means. And you all are spot on. You're thinking it's points that are on the same line, co and linear, and you are correct. Okay, so we'll define it as points that lie on the same line. Okay, so that seems really straightforward and really clear, but things can get tricky because questions will ask whether a certain point or 2 points are collinear, or are these 4 points collinear? And what you have to ask yourself is, does a line exist in the universe that could connect them? Okay, so I'm going to grab a scrap piece of paper and show you some examples. So you just sit back and relax. So if I give you this point and this point, and I ask you, are points A and B collinear? It's tempting to say no because there isn't a line seen, but the answer is actually yes, because does there exist a line in the universe that could connect these 2 points? And there is. It would be this one right here. Okay, then I ask, are points C, D, and E collinear? And the answer to those 3 would be no, because there is not a single line in the universe that could connect all 3. C and D are collinear, and C and E are collinear, and E and D are collinear. But are all 3 of them collinear? No. Okay, so I'm going to add in our notes. I'm actually going to put this in a second color. You can put it in the same if you want, but I'm going to say quotes. Does a line exist in the universe that contains them? Okay, that's the question that it's asking when it wants to know whether 2 points are collinear. Okay, all right, so then coplanar is going to be very much the same. So they are points that lie on the same plane. Okay, and again, you can ask yourself, does a plane, a surface, exist in the universe that would contain all of those points that they're asking? Okay, so I don't think I'm going to write the whole phrase, but I'm going to do quotes, does a plane exist in the universe that contains them? Okay, so same question, just exchange the word line with plane. Okay, and those questions are actually super complicated, so we'll be talking about those a lot this chapter. All right, let's go to some things we know, line segments and rays. So we said lines go on forever, but if you remember back from previous maths, line segments have 2 endpoints, okay? So line segment has 2 endpoints and all the points between them. I abbreviate a lot, so I put PTS for points. Okay, and I realize you're still learning my handwriting, so I do get a little sloppy, but hopefully this helps. All right, so let's draw a picture of a line segment. Okay, so I'm going to put dots on the 2 ends, and I'm going to put an A here and a B here. Again, those are points, so I labeled them with capital letters. Okay, then that line segment can be named in 2 different ways. That can be line segment AB, but you must put a little line segment symbol, meaning no arrows, above it. Or you can name it BA. Okay, either one is fine. If you forget the symbol on top, it actually means something different and it is wrong. Okay, so that's the kind of little details we got to really be careful about. All right, let's talk about rays. So rays are kind of the cross between a line segment and a line. So it has one endpoint and then an arrow going in one direction forever. Okay, so it has one endpoint and all the points in one direction. Now, if we were teaching this live, I'd be looking to see what your faces were doing because it used to be I couldn't say the words one direction without a oh reaction. So you can roll your eyes at that, but that was definitely part of it. All right, so I'm going to draw a picture of a ray, okay, and I'm going to have it going left-ish. So if you can make yours look the same as mine, I'm going to call this point A, this point B, and this point C. All right, so if I ask you to name that ray, there is more than one correct answer, but there are many incorrect answers. Okay, so if you want to pause and make a guess of a couple acceptable answers, then that would be great to get your brain thinking. Okay, here are the answers that work. So A, B, with the ray pointing like that is correct, or the only other acceptable answer is actually A, C. Okay, so let's talk about that. This first letter that you write has to be the endpoint. Okay, people say, no, but this arrow is pointing to the left. That's fine. When you label them, you will never draw an arrow pointing to the left. They will always point to the right. Okay, so since A is that point right there, then it always has to get named there. Okay, so it's tricky. That's like the end point. I know we think of it as like the starting point, so you can call it either one. It is an end point, or you can think of it as the starting point. Okay, that's what goes first in each of these. Okay, and then the second letter, B or C, is the direction that the ray heads. Okay, so let's see. Dropping pens. So I'm going to maybe circle those and say those are the direction that it heads. Okay, I'm kind of color coding. Hope that doesn't make it look more confusing than it is, but it is tricky to get rays set up correctly at the beginning. Okay, so the reason you can't name it ray like BA is because that would be the points starting at B and then going to the right forever, which is a different set of points, not the ones that we've drawn. All right. Next is opposite rays. So opposite rays are actually the most commonly mixed up thing in these notes today. So want to be really clear. So opposite rays do take two. So there needs to be two rays. Okay, and then we'll continue the definition. But I first want to talk about what our gut instincts are so that we can fix them. So when I read opposite rays, so I'm going to go back to scrap paper real quick. When I read opposite rays, I would picture this. Okay, so that ray and that ray as being opposite rays because they point opposite directions. This is not an example of opposite rays. Those do not count. Okay, opposite rays have two requirements. One of them is that they point opposite directions, so that's true. But the second requirement is that they actually have to have the same, a common end point. So this point needs to be the same for both of them. Okay, so if I have this ray, the only ray that is opposite to it is this one. So together they do form a line. Okay, so let me show you something else that's not. So these two rays are not opposite rays. They do share a common endpoint, but they don't point opposite directions. Okay? So this one's yay, the other two are nay. All right, so let's put those requirements down. So we are going to say there are two rays with one common endpoint. With one common endpoint that form a line. Okay, so again, we just kind of have to acknowledge what we pictured opposite rays being initially and acknowledge that that's not true and that they have to form a line. Okay, they have to have that common point between them. All right. Then, oh, I should draw a picture of that in our notes, not just on scrap paper. Okay, so let's draw. I'm actually going to start by drawing a line, and then I'm going to put a point in the middle. I'm going to call that point C. I can't label my two opposite rays with that because rays take two letters to name them. So I have to put another point on this side, so I'll say B, and I have to put another point on this side, so I'll say A. Okay, and if I do that, then I can show that C going to the right and C going to the left, those are the two opposite rays. Okay, so that's ray CB and ray CA. That's some good practice in naming rays again, too. All right, last term we have to define is intersection. And that is just the set of points that two different things have in common. Okay, so if I asked you what is the intersection of this pen and this pen, the answer would just be that point right there. That's the only thing they both have in common. Okay, if I asked you what is the intersection of, I wish I had two different color Post-it notes, but I only have one color right now. So if I say, oh, actually I'll do this. What's the intersection of this Post-it note and that piece of paper? So you can see if I lay it flat, but I'm going vertical with it, okay? The intersection of that Post-it note and this piece of paper would just be these points right here. That's the only thing that the Post-it note and the piece of paper, what they were touching, okay? What they both have in common. So we'll define intersection as the set of points that figures have in common. Awesome. Okay, so that is the first part of Standard 1. So again, we have not done the second learning target, which is I can draw pictures of all of those things. We've started to, but we haven't really dug into that yet. So, okay, let's add one note to our notes. Okay, and that is simply going back to this idea of collinear that we talked about earlier. So I referenced of whether like when can points be collinear and when can they not be collinear. So anytime a line exists in the universe between 2 points, it's considered collinear. So actually, between any 2 points you pick, there's always a line. Okay? If you stare off at a point on a wall that you're looking at, okay, and then you put your fist in the air, so do that. Can you imagine like a piece of string connecting your fist to that point that you're staring at on the wall? The answer should be yes. Okay, it exists. We don't see it, but it can be there. So there's actually no 2 points in the universe that aren't collinear. So the note I'm going to add is this phrase, between any 2 points there is. And I'm not just going to say a line, I'm going to say there is exactly